My jewels, welcome back to another episode of the Fishbowl with Jade. As schools begin reconvening, children are getting ready to walk back into classrooms, hallways, cafeterias, playgrounds, sports fields, and all of the social environments that come with being a student. Parents are buying school supplies, new clothes, new shoes, backpacks, lunch boxes, and everything else our children need to start another school year. We're making sure they have what they need academically, but today I want us to talk about something that doesn't come in a school supply list. I want us to talk about how our children treat one another. Today we're talking about bullying, but I'm going to approach this conversation a little differently. We spend a lot of time talking about the child who is being bullied. We ask what happened to them, how we can protect them, how we can build their confidence, and how we can make sure they feel safe. Those conversations are necessary. But today I want to turn the fishbowl around and ask a question that may make some parents uncomfortable. What happens when your child is the bully? Yes, I said it. What happens when the child you've raised, the child you love, the child you believe would never intentionally hurt anybody, is the child making another child afraid to come to school? What happens when the phone call comes from the teacher or the principal and you hear that your child has been making fun of another child, excluding them, embarrassing them, threatening them, spreading rumors about them, or putting their hands on them? What happens when somebody tells you that your child is the reason another child doesn't want to walk through those school doors? Parents, I want us to sit with that question for a minute because our first instinct may be to defend our children. That's natural. That's our baby. We know the child we see at home. We know the child who hugs us, laughs with us, asks us for money, wants something from the grocery store, tells us about their favorite television show, or crawls into our bed when they're scared. So when somebody tells us, your child is bullying my child, our first response may be, my child would never do that. But what if they did? What if the hardest thing we have to do as parents isn't protecting our children from the world, but accepting that sometimes our children are participating in the very behavior we're trying to protect them from? I recently saw a skit on social media that showed a child being bullied because of the clothes and shoes he was wearing. It was one of those situations that may make you laugh at first because it's presented as a skit. But when you really think about what is happening underneath the humor, it's not funny at all. A child is being judged because of what he has on his body. He's being made to feel less than because somebody believes their shoes, clothes, or appearance make them more valuable. And that got me thinking because somebody bought those shoes, somebody put those clothes on that child, somebody probably told that child to have a good day before sending them out the door. And then that child walks into a school building and somebody else decides that what they're wearing makes them worthy of humiliation. So, where did that behavior come from? That's the question I want to explore today. Bullying doesn't always begin in the school hallway. Sometimes we have to ask whether children are learning how to treat people by watching the adults around them. I'm not saying that every child who bullies comes from a bad home. I'm not saying parents are responsible for every behavior their child displays. Children are influenced by friends, social media, television, entertainment, school environments, siblings, and countless other things. But parents, we cannot completely remove ourselves from the equation. Our children are watching us. They're listening to us. They're studying how we respond to people. They're watching how we talk about the neighbor. They're listening when we make comments about someone's weight. They're hearing us talk about somebody's clothes. They're watching us laugh at somebody online. They're seeing us make jokes at another person's expense. They're watching how we treat people we don't like. And sometimes we don't realize that our children are taking notes. We may say, don't bully anybody, while our children are watching us ridicule someone because of how they look. We may tell them, don't judge people, while they hear us judging somebody because of where they live, what kind of car they drive, what job they have, or how much money they make. We may tell them to be kind while they watch adults weaponize social media against another person. Children don't just learn from our instructions, they learn from our examples. Now, that doesn't mean we should automatically blame parents every time a child bullies somebody. I want to be fair in this conversation. There can be many reasons behind bullying behavior. A child may be trying to fit in, they may be trying to gain popularity, they may be insecure, they may be trying to impress their friends, they may have difficulty managing anger, they may have learned aggressive behavior from somewhere else, they may be experiencing problems they don't know how to communicate. But understanding why a child is behaving a certain way does not mean we excuse the behavior. Those are two different things. We can say, I want to understand what is happening with my child, while also saying, what you did was wrong. And parents, I think that's where we sometimes get it twisted. We think holding our children accountable means we're failing them. It doesn't. Accountability is part of love. If my child does something wrong, I don't want to be the parent who makes excuses for them because I'm afraid they'll be embarrassed. I want to be the parent who loves them enough to tell them the truth. If my child hurts somebody, I need to be able to look at my child and say, I love you, but what you did was wrong. Because if we never teach our children that their actions have consequences, the world eventually will. And the world may not teach them with the same patience, love, and grace that a parent can. Let's talk about the different faces of bullying, because I think sometimes we only recognize bullying when somebody puts their hands on somebody. Physical bullying is obvious. Pushing, hitting, kicking, tripping, taking someone's belongings, or physically intimidating another child are behaviors we recognize immediately. But bullying doesn't always leave a bruise. Sometimes the bruise is emotional. A child can be bullied through insults, name-calling, teasing, humiliation, threats, rumors, exclusion, manipulation, and constant criticism. A child can be bullied because of their clothes, their shoes, their weight, their hair, their skin, their speech, their disability, their family, their grades, their neighborhood, their interests, or simply because someone has decided they are an easy target. And then we have cyberbullying. And that one has changed the game. When many of us were children, school ended when we left school. You could get on the bus, walk home, close your bedroom door, and have some distance from whatever happened that day. Our children don't necessarily have that escape. A child can leave school and still be bullied through a phone. They can be added to a group chat just to be humiliated. Somebody can record them without their permission. A picture can be posted, a rumor can spread, comments can pile up. Other children can join in because they see everybody else doing it. And suddenly, one child's embarrassment becomes entertainment for an audience. That's serious. Because we have to remember that children are still developing emotionally. They are learning who they are. They're learning how to navigate friendships, rejection, embarrassment, confidence, and identity. When bullying repeatedly attacks those areas, the impact can be significant. Bullying can affect a child's confidence, academic performance, relationships, sense of safety, and emotional well-being. In severe situations, children can become isolated, stop wanting to attend school, withdraw from their families, or experience serious emotional distress. That's why we cannot dismiss everything with, they're just kids. Yes, they're kids. That's exactly why they need adults to intervene. And this is where I want to talk to the parents of children who are being bullied. Please make your home a place where your child can tell you the truth. Not just the truth when they're doing something good, the truth when they're embarrassed, scared, ashamed, or worried you're going to be disappointed. Sometimes we ask our children, how was school? And they say, fine. But fine doesn't always mean fine. Sometimes we have to ask different questions. Did anybody say anything to you today that made you uncomfortable? Did you see anybody being picked on? Did anybody make fun of you? Who did you sit with at lunch? Did anybody make you feel like you didn't belong? And then we have to listen. Not listen while we're looking at our phone. Not listen while we're preparing our response. Actually listen. Because if we want our children to come to us when something serious happens, we have to build that relationship before the crisis. And here's something else we have to teach our children. Telling an adult isn't weakness. We need to stop teaching children that asking for help makes them a snitch. There is a difference between tattling and reporting something that is hurting, threatening, or endangering someone. We need our children to understand that difference. But now, let's turn the fishbowl again. What if the school calls you and tells you your child is the bully? What are you going to do? Are you going to immediately call the other parent? Are you going to blame the teacher? Are you going to say, well, what did the other child do? Are you going to tell your child, I told you not to do that and move on? Or are you going to actually investigate what happened? Because sometimes our children don't tell us the whole story. And that's not necessarily because they're bad children. They're children. They may be embarrassed. They may be afraid of getting in trouble. They may not understand the seriousness of what they did. But our responsibility as parents is to find out the truth. Talk to your child. Talk to the school. Understand what happened. Find out whether this was an isolated incident or a pattern. Find out who was involved. And then, once you understand what happened, address it. Don't protect your child's behavior simply because you're embarrassed that your child did it. Your child's behavior is not your identity as a parent, but your response to that behavior says a lot about the kind of parent you are. If your child is wrong, you can correct them. You can require them to apologize when appropriate. You can work with the school. You can establish consequences. You can restrict access to social media if that's where the behavior is occurring. You can teach them empathy. You can ask them to think about how they would feel if someone treated them that way. And if you discover that there is something deeper happening with your child, don't be afraid to seek professional help. There is nothing wrong with saying, I need help understanding why my child is behaving this way. That's parenting too. And I want to make another distinction because I don't believe in labeling children for the rest of their lives based on one bad decision. A child who bullies someone isn't automatically a bad person, but a bad behavior still needs to be addressed. We have to separate the child from the behavior. You are not a bad child can coexist with what you did was unacceptable. That's an important conversation. Our goal should not simply be to punish children. Our goal should be to teach them. We want the child who was bullied to feel safe again, but we also want the child who did the bullying to learn something. We want them to understand empathy. We want them to understand consequences. We want them to understand that having power over somebody doesn't make you powerful. Making somebody cry doesn't make you strong. Having other people afraid of you doesn't make you a leader. And humiliating somebody because of their shoes doesn't make your shoes more valuable. It simply means somebody else was made to feel smaller so you could feel bigger. And that brings me to something else. Where does bullying end? Because unfortunately, it doesn't always end when we graduate. There are adult bullies, they're in workplaces, they're in families, they're in communities, they're on social media, they're in friend groups, and sometimes adults have simply become better at hiding it. An adult may not push somebody in a hallway, but they can isolate someone from a group. They may not call somebody names to their face, but they can create a social media post designed to embarrass them. They may not physically intimidate somebody, but they can use their position, money, influence, or relationships to make someone feel powerless. So when we teach our children how to treat other people, we're not just dealing with a school problem. We're teaching them how to become adults. We're teaching them what kind of coworker they will be, what kind of friend they will be, what kind of spouse they will be, what kind of parent they will become, what kind of leader they will be. Because bullying isn't just about childhood. It's about how we learn to use power. Parents, that's why this conversation matters. I don't expect parents to hold hands and sing kumbaya with every other parent. We are not always going to agree. Our children aren't always going to get along. Conflict is part of life. But there's a difference between conflict and cruelty. There's a difference between not liking somebody and deliberately humiliating them. There's a difference between an argument and a pattern of intimidation. There's a difference between children having a disagreement and one child repeatedly targeting another child. We have to teach our children those differences, and we have to be willing to have those conversations even when they're uncomfortable. So as our children return to school, let's not just ask them whether they have their pencils. Let's ask them whether they know how to treat people. Let's ask them whether they know what bullying looks like. Let's ask them whether they know what to do if they see somebody being bullied. Let's ask them whether they know they can come home and tell us if something happens. And parents, let's ask ourselves the hardest question of all. If someone called me tomorrow and told me my child was the bully, would I be willing to hear it? Would I believe my child automatically? Or would I be willing to investigate? Would I protect my child's reputation or would I protect my child's future? Because sometimes those two things require very different decisions. I would rather my child experience a difficult conversation with me today than become an adult who believes they are entitled to hurt people without consequences. I would rather correct my child than defend behavior that could follow them for years. And if my child is being bullied, I want them to know that they never have to carry that burden alone. I want them to know that they can come home, they can talk, they can cry, they can tell me what happened, and I'm going to listen. Because whether your child is the one being bullied, the one doing the bullying, or the child standing on the sidelines watching it happen, there is a conversation that needs to happen. And maybe that's where we need to start. Not with shame, not with blame, but with accountability. Because our children are watching us. And one day they're going to become the adults who create the environment that our grandchildren have to live in. So, what are we teaching them? My jewels, I want you to think about that. And I want to leave you with this question. If your child is the bully, what are you going to do about it? Not what are you going to do to the other child? Not what are you going to do to the other parents? Not how are you going to defend your child? What are you going to do about your child? Because sometimes the most loving thing a parent can say isn't, my child would never do that. Sometimes the most loving thing we can say is, if my child did it, I'm going to find out why, and I'm going to make sure it stops. This is the Fishbowl with Jade. And around here, we're going to keep having the conversations that may make us uncomfortable because those may be the conversations that our children need us to have the most. Until next time, my jewels, stay honest, stay compassionate, stay willing to look in the mirror, and remember, sometimes the hardest thing to face isn't what somebody else is doing to our children. Sometimes it's what our children may be doing to somebody else.